Once again, I extend my greetings to all. The request kindly be seated. We are about to start the program today. We seek apologies. We are late by 19 minutes. Kindly bear with us. Please be seated. In the next couple of minutes, the program will start.
थोड़ा सा भी आए
Namaskar to everybody. Let's begin, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have assembled in this very august hall on a very pious and important occasion. As you know, only little fortnight ago, on 21st of February, we observed International Mother Language Day that is observed around the world, and Kashmir is also across the world to observe this day in their own manner. And today, it is an occasion for us to celebrate that day and observe the day. We dedicate ourselves to improving and enhancing protecting our mother language, that is Kashmiri language. And as everybody knows, London is the foremost item of our Kashmiri language. And I will start this program with a lullaby. This is signing in Zaman country. Normally, I would have liked to go through the physics language that is our mother language Kashmiri, but we have some honored guests here, so it will not be appropriate to converse in Kashmiri. Therefore, I will switch on to English or Hindi in between. So, famous Sadras Nine Chas Kakos Gayo Nitita Amen Ajan Onzan Shama Zuchum Brahma Garagatsana. I request dignitaries please come on the stage. First of all, I request Professor Sudhir Sopariji, eminent in science, science for world, well-decorated scientist of our country, Padma Shri Awardee. Again, I request Professor Dagomir is chief guest, our guest of honor from Germany, especially come from Germany to attend this program. Not only attend, he is chief architect of this Indian work that I will release very shortly. Welcome, sir. Now, next, Dr. S. M. Pandita, illustrious grandson of Professor Nityanand Shastri, one of the key figures behind the work that we see today before us, Shri Veer Munshi. Veer Munshi is an eminent artist, as we know. He is, I can easily say, like we say for a god, he is only present on shed. Veer Munshi is omnipresent for all of us. Why? Because he has created an image of body Sharika, in whose blessings we are today here, that adorns the walls of every Kashmiri family across the world. Thank you. Shri Umakant Kaji, please come to the dais. The book that we read today is book that we released, the Kashmiri translation of Quixote. Before proceeding further, I request Mrs. Archana Sopanji and the complete vocalist to come and for the invocation prayer. Mrs. Archana Sopanji. In the order of P.A. Archana, please.
सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणे विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा
Mrs. Kamidar, please come here. And Kiran Premiji, I request that please come forward. And our traditional Heze Bangu, very auspicious. Please.
Instead of worship but come to Hindu Bangu, you say Shubha Samavesh Devan. So we start with that. Hindu
creating an atmosphere of blessings. These are the blessings that we invoke from the goddess. Gods, these are from Samali roots, and roots from Samali. From that we have invoked the blessings of gods, and we are going ahead with our auspicious program. Please. Lighting of the lamp. without this process or lacking of design. Dr. Sumitra Sopariti, Dr. Sumitra Manditani,
स्पेस चाहिए बस थैंक यू ठीक है सर कटिंग बस इसमें भी कुछ नज़र आता है वही बहुत
हाँ नहीं बोला ये जगह
नहीं थी तो कवरिंग हो गया
शुभं करोति कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदा शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तु ते।
सारे 180 डिग्री घूम गया
Let's give a big applause, please. For kindly remain there, Dr. Pandita. Now I request distinguished members kindly pay full tributes to Sri P.N. Kachru. Sri P.N. Kachru ji is former chairman of Nityanand Shastri Kashmir Research Institute. He was an eminent artist. He is here a professor in the valley. I request now, Sri CM all, please come forward to deliver welcome address. Sri CM is an excellent author, distinguished author of two important books that are both followed on the commission. One is Encyclopedia of Faridabad Heritage, and second is Srika Philosophy Pesticide. These are two unique books. You have one material on everything related to Srika Philosophy, one particular place, and entire community at one place in the Encyclopedia of Faridabad Heritage. These two books are unique in their own way and are no parallel, and I don't think you will see any other work of that nature. Thank you for that. Prasad is also working on temple heritage presently and that will be another movement to contribute to the society. I am very sure, like we have seen two books earlier, it will be again an encyclopedia of the responsibility. Thank you very much, Prasad. Please come.
My
program. And as you know, this is a Spanish word, a 17th Spanish word, which was written by, and was Miguel de Cervantes. Now this book has two records in its sense. One is that it has most number of copies in print after Bible, and this is the second book which has most number of copies printed in the world. And the second one is that this is translated into most of the languages in the world. And again, this is after Bible. So Bible is the first, this happens to be the second. And then that's it. Okay, the original translation was done by Professor Nityanand Shastri and Dr. Jagad. This was done in 1935-36. And you see, after 1935-36, it took so many years to get it in print form. There must have been many things in why it was not published earlier. I think it was waiting for our Makanji to do the honors. And for the Sanskrit version, it was chief guest, the guest of honor, who had to do it. So Sanskrit part was done by our dog, what is his name? They made through. Yes. Dragonia. I'm sorry for Shanti. Okay. Now, as I said, the manuscript remained unpublished all these years. Now, to grace this occasion, we have with us our chief guest, Padma Professor Sudhir Sopori, nationally decorated, renowned genetic scientist, and former Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. I am happy to welcome you, sir. We have with us our guest of honor, Professor Dr. Dragomir D.V. Prof, Indologist and Tibetologist, Marburg, Germany. He is the architect of Sanskrit edition, facsimile Kashmiri edition, and now printed Kashmiri edition of Don Quixote. We owe a debt of gratitude to you, sir, for rescuing the words. I wholeheartedly welcome you to this event. Thank you very much for traveling from all the way to Germany and bestowing this honor to us. We have with us Sri Lee Munshi, a contemporary artist, painter, and sculptor. He is one of the foremost Indian artists whose works adorn various national and international galleries. He is an award-winning artist. His redrawn caricatures of the main protagonists of today's book, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, adorn the Kashmiri printed edition. A warm welcome to I welcome Dr. Hasan Pandita.
बाहर एक गाड़ी खड़ी है
DL366, D2966. Traffic is held, please. Remove the brake. Thank you.
I welcome Dr. S. Faridabad, grandson of Professor Nitanand Shastri. He has given an introduction to the book. He is an avid collector of books and antiquarian objects of Kashmir. As a researcher, scholar, author and writer, his interests cover interface of scholarship between West and Kashmir during late 19th and early 20th century. I extend my warm welcome to Pandita Sahib. He has always surprised me with his contributions. Sri Magat Rajput is the son of eminent scholar artist late Sri P.L. Rajput. He is the editor of the present work. Umakantji is presently donning 3 hats. He is the concurrent editor of 3 community magazines, Neem of NSPR, Jharkhand Academy of KSS, and spiritual magazine Malini of Ishwar Ashram Trust. He also has served as the editor of NAR of AIPS. For the present work, he volunteered himself to transcribe the original into first printed edition. In this endeavor, he collaborated with Dragoneer P.V. Prof. We have among us, I don't know if Justice Dave is here. Justice Dave is here. We have among us Sri Anand Malviya, great grandson of Madan Malviya, great Indian nationalist and founder of Benares University. I extend warm welcome to you. We have among us Sri Nitin Gupta, grandson of former Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir during 1947 and later third Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India. My warm welcome. We have among us 3 grandsons of the translators. The translators is Professor Nitanand Shastri and Professor Jadal Zadu. And the 3 grandsons, namely Brigadier Amta Krishna Pandita, Commodore Lal Shankar, and Sri Sushil Kumar Pandita. Brigadier Pandita has the double distinction that Professor Nitanand Shastri was his paternal grandfather, and Professor Jadal Zadu his maternal grandfather. Commodore Lalit and Sri Sushil Kumar are grandsons of Professor Nitanand Shastri. Professor Nitanand Shastri and Professor Jadal Zadu were relatives by matrimonial alliance. Professor Zadu's eldest daughter was married to Sri Janakinath, second son of Professor Nitanand Shastri. I extend my warm welcome to Sri Narendra Gupta, former MLA, Faridabad. Sir, my warm welcome to you, sir. I extend my warm welcome to the members of Nitanand Shastri National Research Institute, NSKRI, founded in 1998, is engaged in preserving and promoting Kashmir culture and heritage. I also extend my warm welcome to experts from media, press, radio, TV, and social media. I extend my warm welcome to all those who are present here. Today is a great day for all of us. With the addition of this work, we have become richer. Our legislature has become much more richer. Congratulations to all those who made it possible. Thank you.
And also please, request is that please come forward and present the bouquet to Sri Lanka. Anil, please. Present the bouquet to Sri Lanka. Anil is former General Secretary of Faridabad and very social leader of the community. Contribution to the community, the Samaj has been governmental. They are very strong words of the community. Now, proceed some formalities. Hello, we are getting ready to proceed with some formalities. We will guests on the desk. We will proceed further. I will request to first your court kindly present the book. So, for example, not this one. Request Mrs. Archana Soporiji. Please come forward and present the bouquet to Dr. Bhawan Vinodam. As I said earlier, Bhawan from all the way from Germany, especially for this program, the key aspect of this work. First, we have volunteer for gospel and publishing. Sanskrit portion of and then followed by maximum addition of the Kashmiri version and now the printed version of Kashmiri done here. Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Mr. M.K. Pajanara, Mr. President, sir, kindly please. The request please represent the bouquet to Sri V. Ruchiji. As I said earlier, V. Ruchiji is already present. This painting of Sharika is across the world. We are equally proud of Sri M.K. Pajanji for his contribution to the community service. Next, I request Dr. Kumar Bhundu. Sir, please honor us by presenting the bouquet to Dr. Sharika Pandita. Dr. Sharika Pandita is a unique research scholar. I can safely say with all our humility, we have none like Dr. Sharika Pandita in the entire community of as far as research skills and his contribution in terms of giving out the contribution of scholars like schools of scholars who interface with European scholars. This was buried under the debris of time, under the debris of negative. But thanks to Dr. Sundara Pandita, now we see that she is the light of the day and we again are hopeful that the community gets new recognition thanks to the efforts of Dr. Pandita. Thank you, Dr. Pandita. Next, I request Shri Indrajit Kalamji. Is he here?
Yes, yes.
Again, a very respected member of Samaj here for his contribution. Thank you, Teresa, for giving to the honors and present the bouquet to Sri Kumar and Kasan. Thank you very much, sir. Now, as has been already informed, we have this August hall today the presence of the family members of late Nityanand Shastriji and Professor Jayapal. I request Sri Kashi Apuji, please come forward, Sri Kashi Apuji, and please present a bouquet to Brigadier Appa Krishna Pandita. As I have already said by Sri Professor, he has a complete distinction of being the grandson of Pandit Nityanand Shastri as well as Pandit Jayapal Zada. Sir, we are very honored by your presence today. Thank you very much. Kashu Apuji, again as you know, a very distinguished Samaj Sevak, known for his contribution to the community, especially Faridabad. Next, may I request Dr. Vinod Darji, an active member of Samaj, President General Secretary of National Samaj, the kindly permit the bouquet to Commander, Legislature. Continue big applause. Commander, Legislature has a unique distinction of being Commander of INS Vikrant. Next, I will request Shri Kuldeep Kartiji. So please come forward. Kuldeep Kartiji. Here. All these great people from Faridabad, KS Samaj, that contribution for Samaj, kindly present the bouquet to Shri Anand Bhawan. Sir, we are greatly honored by your presence. We feel that Bhawan Bhawan is here in this presence. We are doing this program. Great contribution for the country, for education. Thank you very much, sir. I would like to mention one more thing. Since we are doing this program, Professor Nityanand Shastri is one of the key translators of these both Sanskrit as well as Kashmiri translation of Don Quixote. After his retirement in 1931, Professor Nityanand Shastri was offered employment by Pandit Bhawan ji personally. He said, your doors are always open whenever you wish. The doors of Banaras University are always open for you. Thank you very much. Next, I request Sri Surinder Bhatt. Surinder ji, please come forward. Again, another stalwart of Samaj. I know him for the last many decades. Great contribution to Samaj. Sir, please do the honors. We have among us Mr. Nitin Gupta, the distinguished grandson of former Chief Prime Minister of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir and third Chief Justice of India. I would like to just a small anecdote with see the accession of Jammu and Kashmir was personally carried by Justice Nehru Maharaj. And a particular extent when he came with the paper from the instructions from Maharaj, he met on 26th of morning Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru in his office in presence of Sardar Patel and Mr. Maharaj expressed his urgency that please do something, help us to, because the raiders have come very near to our state. Jawaharlal Nehru said we have to take an unthinking conversation because we can say yes to it. In this exchange of words, Mr. Maharaj got up. So if you do not give us the immediate help, I have the orders from Maharaj and Gopal. On listening to these words, naturally Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru got angry and he immediately said, Mahajan gold. These are the words quoted by Mahatma Mahajan Sahab only in his book autobiography, looking back, that is on record. Thank you very much. This will be for the student. Thank you very much. I don't think Mr. Amit Dave is present here. No? Okay. Now, next, we are eagerly waiting for the release of the book, that is the Kashmiri translation of Bhawan Quixote. Before proceed further for the formal release of the book, I would request Amal Magazine. I think he is here. Amal, please come forward. Amal, are you in the hall? Probably you are in the hall, I suppose. I'm sorry. Probably you have to wait. Amal, please come forward. Our young dedicated community scholar, please give a big hand to Amal also. And request Kumar Panditaji, another of the grandson of Panditaji Shastri. Sir, please come forward, sir. We are honored for your presence. He is brother of Dr. S. Pandita as well. Now, we have, as we already said, Mr. Narendra Gupta, former Narendra, sir, please come forward and I request Dr. Narendra Tikuji, please come forward and present a bouquet to the former Narendra, Sri Narendra Gupta. Now, everybody is waiting anxiously for the formal release of the Kashmiri translation of Don Quixote. Don Quixote, as I said, has seen the journey of nearly 500 years. Nearly 500 years. And today we are part of the becoming, it's a very historical occasion, we are becoming a part of that journey. And how this journey will be carried forward, we are not clear. It's been fortunate all of us are part of the great journey that has started somewhere in 1605 and it's continued world over. May I request to do the honors, please. Professor Sudhir Saparisan, Dr. Bhawan, Dr. S. Pandita, Sri Gopal Kalsuji and A. Gucci. But please give a big round of applause. And I'd like to sign what is very much your classmate for the first time after 9 decades. He has seen the light of the day in this August hall. It's a partial process. It's a partial translation of the famous Don Quixote, Spanish novel Don Quixote. Thank you very much, sir, for the release of the orders. This novel has traveled in India for nearly 3 centuries. First, it came through the hands of Dr. William Jones somewhere at the end of 18th century. Since that day, it has traveled through many states, many hands. Many translations in India have been done, but Kashmiri and Sanskrit, this is for the first one. The translation was done somewhere in 1935-36, but it is seen the day of light today, and the Sanskrit translation was released in 2019, and Dr. Bhawan also is the key architect, as I already said, of this work, great work, and now I request Dr. Arsun Pandita, please give us an overall background of the work, how it came into life, what were the difficulties you faced, what were the journeys that this great translation work has gone through, and kindly enlighten us about it. Thank you very much. Dr. Arsun Pandita.
Dignitaries of the dais, Padma Shri Professor Sunil Kumar Sopori, Professor Dr. Dragomir Dimitrov, eminent artist Shri Veer Munshi, the editor of today's book, Shri Umakant Kachru, learned members of the audience, distinguished scholars, eminent people. It's a proud privilege for me, especially, to welcome all my elder brothers to this event, who are equally the inheritors of the legacy that has been talked about. I am very proud to address my deep welcome to the distinguished two members in the audience, Mr. Anand Malviya, who is already introduced to you as the great grandson of the famous Indian nationalist and founder of Banaras Hindu University, Shri Anand Malviya. Equally proud to welcome and extend my honorable appreciation to Shri Nitin Gupta, grandson of the former Prime Minister of J&K and also the third Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India. Ladies and gentlemen, Shri Narendra Gupta, former MLA of the Faridabad constituency, we are grateful for his distinguished and eminent presence. I welcome him also. Now let me come to this book. The book is a journey of one of the most outstanding stories of 20th century Indology. Unparalleled story. We have very rare occasions where we have such a rich history behind a particular piece of literature or a creative writing. Now this story was not written by someone who has produced a book or who collaborated to produce these three avatars of Don Quixote, the Sanskrit version, the Kashmiri facsimile edition, and today the first ever printed edition of Don Quixote. The discovery of this story was made in bits and pieces. The parts were collected from far off Sharika, Kashmir. Some bits were picked up from Ahvaz and Kermanshah in Iran. Some parts of the story were written down in Oxford and London, and the greater part of this story started from Boston in Harvard. All these pieces were put together by one single man whose presence today is a special honor for this august gathering. Professor Dragomir Dimitrov of the University of Harvard, an ethologist and criticalogist. Having contributed so much to the Kashmiri knowledge world, himself being a German scholar, he took all the pains to create these three masterpieces of Kashmiri literature. I request the audience and all the dignitaries to stand with me and give a standing ovation to Professor Dimitrov for this rare work. The entire book project did not come in a day. It took almost 15 years to produce three avatars of Don Quixote in Sanskrit and Kashmiri. The entire project was started between the University of Nagpur and in collaboration with Savitri Bai Phule University in Pune. The Sanskrit edition and the Kashmiri facsimile editions were published in 2019 and 2024, and it came out of the collaboration under the Pune Indological Series, issue 3 and 4. The Sanskrit and the facsimile Kashmiri edition was inaugurated and released at the Institute of Cervantes, Embassy of Spain, New Delhi. And the great honor we had at that time, the book was released by Dr. Karan Singh, the eminent scholar statesman. The second point I would perhaps want to highlight, I'm using the word term perhaps more out of caution that I may sound rhetoric. And the fact remains, any ordinary book, any masterpiece, any classic or any great book printed or published on any subject anywhere, as humanity knows for hundreds or thousands of years, has ever been translated simultaneously by the same translators in same amount of time in two languages. It is often that any work is translated into a particular language by a translator. But here is a singular case where the same book, translated by same translators, in the same duration of time. That's the Kashmiri and Sanskrit translation of Don Quixote. I don't know if there is any other example in the world where a single book is translated in two languages at the same time by the same translator or translators. The distinction belongs to Don Quixote. The story begins far ago, to be precise, the story begins far ago, 9 decades ago, during the last century, and to be precise, the year was 1935. In the far off Boston, in the USA, there was a master book collector who was also a keen bibliophile of the collection of Don Quixote translations in manuscript form or in printed forms. A professional chartered accountant and at the same time Vice President of Harvard Benching Trust, an academic body of the Harvard Educational Board. He had a passion of collecting all the kinds of translations and editions of Don Quixote wherever they were printed or published or acquired in any corner of the world, from Iceland to China to Japan to elsewhere, to Germany, France, Portugal. He collected all kinds of translations. By 1940, he had 500 translations, and by 43, he had as many as 700 translations. But until 1935, he did not have the Sanskrit and the Kashmiri translation of Don Quixote. It so happens that long ago in 1927, he befriended Carl Tilden Keller, the Boston book collector, during a party in London which was hosted by a private person, Ella Sykes. So Stein met Keller first time there, and it was a lifelong friendship. In 1935, Keller requested Stein, you seem to be so closely connected to people and scholars in Kashmir. Can't you get me a translation of Kashmiri and Sanskrit? I'd be too glad to have them, but I don't have these two translations. Stein said, I will try my best. He was at the time exploring Iran. He said, I will try my best. I am going next summer to Kashmir, and I will seek the help of my friends, most of whom, with whom I worked on Iceland, have since passed away. If there is anyone who will understand the humor and the real value of this great book, I have my old friend Pandit Nityanand. But unfortunately, I am told he is not well. He is afflicted by a bout of paralysis. But once I get down to Srinagar, I will inquire and ensure that if he is capable to undertake the task. Taking more time, Stein came down to Kashmir, came down to Srinagar in October 1935 and took the personal occasion of visiting. Normally I would have said my grandfather, but now I will say our grandfather, because my three elder brothers are in Norwegians. So he called on Professor Nityanand Shastri and told him that my friend Carl Keller reads these translations, and if you feel physically up to the mark, please let me know, or else return the book to me. The committed Pandit, the committed friend, Nityanand simply said, yes, I will do. But at the time, he was down with paralysis on his right side, could not hold the pen, neither could he write. So the question arose that a dictation needs to be told, and somebody must help Nityanand to make the translation. Initially, Stein had the assurance that our father, my brothers and my Sushil and my father, who knew Sanskrit and had a beautiful handwriting, he will take the dictations from Pandit Nityanand and make. For reasons unknown to me, that arrangement did not materialize. Next, Pandit Nityanand asked Professor Janta to make the translation. I will also help you in revising it, and together they prepared the translation. Exactly, the Kashmiri translation was prepared, except to day and date. Request made on 16th October 1935, and Stein had the Kashmiri translation in his hand, the manuscript, on 16th October 1936 in Ahwaz, Parvat Shah, Iran. Soon followed the Sanskrit translation, and by early 1937, both the manuscripts were sent via Oxford, where Stein was there, to Carl Keller. So Keller was very happy. He was quite satisfied, and he liked particularly the Kashmiri translation written in beautiful, legible handwriting of Professor Janta. The Sanskrit translations were asked by Stein to write in a normal Kashmiri paper, but not the ruled one, and it should be written in a calligraphy. So the Sanskrit manuscript was sent back to Srinagar for a calligraphy copy. So we don't have the original manuscript of Sanskrit written by Professor Janta, but we do have the original Kashmiri manuscript written by Professor Janta. So that's how the manuscript is. Keller used to live in Boston, and since he was connected to Harvard University, it was natural that he knew and was friendly to our greatest Sanskritist, American Sanskritist of his generation, Professor Charles Rodwell Lang. It is also possible that Langman was equally close friend of Orwell's time. Whether it was Carl Keller or whether it was Stein who entrusted the Sanskrit manuscript to Professor Langman to have a look at the Sanskrit manuscript, and if any corrections need be there, because Stein had no time to read because he was busy exploring. But he wrote to Keller, I am assured of the quality of the manuscript since it has come from the hand of Professor Nityanand. So I need not see it again. Now when the manuscript was located, it was seen that it had some editorial corrections made in ink pen. A dash here, a dot there, a stroke here, and they numbered as many as 340 or something. 340 corrections in the Sanskrit manuscript. There stood the picture. So one man, John Keller, Stein, two translators, and Charles Langman knew about these translations. 1940, Lyman also died, and the translation stayed with Karl Keller. At the time of his death, before his own death, he bequeathed 500 translations to Harper Library, but kept 200 translations with him, which he informed Stalin. Amongst these 200, I still carry and the Sanskrit one you got prepared for me. So 200 still stayed with Karl Keller, but Karl Keller, though himself died in 1955, but the Keller Foundation had bequeathed that the entire 200 manuscripts also must be bequeathed to the Harvard Library. So ultimately, all the 700 translations of Don Quixote, including the Kashmiri and the Sanskrit manuscript, are housed today in the Harvard Library shelves under Karl Keller's foundation. Now, after this, for next 20 years, till late 70s, from 50s to 70s, when Keller died, nothing ever was heard about these translations. Neither in Srinagar, Kashmir, nor anywhere in the world, whether in England or in America. Nobody knew, and they lied forlorn and neglected and quietly sleeping on the shelf of the Harvard Library. Following the death of my father, Gopinath, I chanced to read some letters of my grandfather. He had exchanged during the preparation of these two translations with Stein. Stein was the mediator at whose behest Nityananda and Jadavara undertook the translation work. Now, it's at that point of time I became aware that these translations do exist. But as destiny has it, and everything happens in time, it was another 20 years that I was the only person probably on the planet who knew that these translations exist. I did nothing about them. In 97-98, I chanced to write 2 short papers, one in Journal of Himalayan Foundation and one I contributed as a profile of our grandfather, Nityananda, where a mention was made about the Don Quixote translations. And so also, a profile of Professor Datta was made where reference was given to these translations. Luckily, fortunately, no Hispanics, no Indologist, no Indian scholar, no Kashmiri scholar took notice of my small article. Another couple of years passed. I collated this information and wrote a small book, Western Indologists and Sanskrit Savants of Kashmir, where I made a small mention of this essay concerning the existence of these 2 translations in the Harvard University. People in my own community, journalists and always wish to make observation about it, but more serious scholars like Professor Bhawan and his colleagues in Germany did take notice of this article and looked for the manuscript. It was in the year 2011 Professor Bhawan's colleague, Professor Stanislav Yager, located the 2 manuscripts in the Harvard Library, Harvard. 2011, these were located, and immediately a digital copy of the Sanskrit manuscripts was brought to Harvard University, where for the next couple of years a curriculum course was read and taught in classrooms, which was attended by many students and teachers and professors like Professor Bhawan John Hatter and Professor Jürgen Hammond. They read this as a classroom work along with people in Pune University, Savitribai Phule Pune University, and ultimately in 2017, Professor Dragomir took the initiative of editing the Sanskrit version. So, the Sanskrit version came in the year 2019 from Professor Dragomir's hand. It contains an exceptional over 100 pages of extraordinary history of Don Quixote and his manuscripts, and the whole story, which I will just briefly mention here in more explicit and more detailed manner, precisely quoting all authors, all letters written by Taylor, written by Stan, written by Professor Nityanand, Professor Jagannathan, and Carl Kelly. That's how the Sanskrit version came in 2019. Alongside, Professor Dragomir dreamt of producing a printed edition of the Kashmiri translation. Possibly all sorts of efforts were put in to make some arrangement while the printed version would also be prepared. Despite best efforts, it did not come through for a day, it did not come through till March 2026 for more than 8 years. But the manuscript digital copy was obtained. It's our great good fortune that Umakanji voluntarily shared with me that I would undertake to translate it into Devanagari. Let me see if it works. As he began the journey, I don't know anything about the Kashmiri language and I don't know the phonetical knowledge and how the alphabets are. I just took him across to Professor Dragomir. I said, you share your manuscript, what you have produced, and let us see what is his opinion. Professor Dragomir took all the pains to convert the entire text written by Shri Umakanji into a unique Devanagari font called Schlegel's font, developed 2 centuries ago. So he developed the type font afresh to get the book printed in that beautiful, exceptional couple of months. Umakanji started sometime at the end of 2024 after the facsimile edition was released. And by January, end of January, early February, Professor Dragomir and Umakanji kept on shuttling their correspondence and papers, and ultimately everything was placed. The book was typeset and designed and converted into the Schlegel type font by none other than Professor Dragomir in collaboration with his team of other academicians, mostly at Pune. Under his guidance, I know one named Mr. Quixote, who developed the font, and ultimately it was standardized to type Kashmiri in this special. So the book you will have now in your hands is no ordinary book. It's the first ever Kashmiri book written in Schlegel form. In the conclusion, I think I have grossly spoken how the printed edition came and how the final book has arrived to this state that we have released. I make just 2 passing comments. In my opinion, the Sanskrit edition of Don Quixote is the greatest contribution of Kashmir to nothing equals the Sanskrit translation. And equally so, the Kashmiri translation earns Kashmiri language itself its greatest international recognition. So it's a Indian honor, but the architect, the person who made it possible, single-handedly pieced that entire story. As I told you, this book would have never been possible if Professor Bhawan would not have discovered the story. Hundreds of letters, connecting them, taking reference one from there, one from here, putting the imagination and connecting those dots to draw and write down the whole history of these manuscripts in more than 100 pages. So finally, here is the architect of three avatars of Kashmiri Quixote in Sanskrit, in Kashmiri, and a fax by addition. It's a tribute to the translators and those people who really wanted and desired to have this translation, Tal Keller, and indefatigable pursuance of oral style to get this translation prepared. I think on behalf of everyone, in my own humble words, I really say, Pranam to those who are this. And share this whole story. I am grateful to Umakanji, personally indebted to Professor Subir Somoni, who has written a scintillating foreword to Umakanji's work and appreciated how he and Professor Bhawan collaborated to produce something which is eternal in terms of Kashmir's heritage and legacy. I thank every one of you to hear me, and I don't know how far I have conveyed to the story, but the cross satisfaction is what was believed not to exist, and at some point believed, not believed, known to exist, and still took 90 long years for it to come into the public light. All credit to Professor Bhawan. Thank you and namaskar to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Faridabad. Now, I'm sure all of us have become a little more wiser after listening to Dr. Faridabad in detail about the journey of these translations. May I request now Shri Umakanji, please describe your journey in your own words. Please come.
Namaskar. Shri Professor Subir Somoni, Professor Dr. Ravi Lezetro, eminent artist and my dear friend, B. Munshi, and my brother, Dr. Surendra, distinguished guests in the audience, ladies and gentlemen. 6th March happens to be the birth anniversary of my father, H. P. Kanchi, was the former chairman of the Tamil Shastri Kashmir Research Society. This 6th March is his 101st birth anniversary. Generally, we have been in LSTMI, we were having the closest to his day, birthday, the Sunday, we used to have P.M. March to Memorial Lecture. This year we decided that let us coincide
the release of this book with his government. So this is in a way celebration of this great scholar, artist, and destiny defies the rules of time and space. It is not caged by limits of either and transcends beyond the comprehensible boundaries. What can better exemplify this than the translation of the classic Don Quixote, 5 chapters into Kashmiri, done in 1935-36, like you already heard, I think I'm just repeating, and then away for the next 90 long years for the manuscript to be textualized and published. I'm honored to be a small part at the tail end of its adventurous journey. I am neither a scholar nor a linguist. It was the act of destiny again that put the facsimile edition of the book into my lap a year and a half ago. My inquisitiveness took me to the first page of the Kashmiri manuscript. The meticulously handwritten text was inviting and I attempted to read. And guess what? It was very easy to read. The translation was so gripping that I involuntarily got hold of my mobile phone, this one, and the translation was gripping and I involuntarily got hold of this, my mobile phone, selected the Kashmiri keyboard and started transcribing the words from the manuscript. The first page done, I shared it with Dr. Faridabad, and thus began the journey of textualizing the whole manuscript. We heard the entire history of Kashmiri version and Sanskrit version. I don't think I will repeat that, but I want to slightly digress for a while from the subject, and I would like to talk. It's important actually to give the background challenge that Devanagari Kashmiri script had been facing for the past few decades. Post the unfortunate displacement of Kashmiri Pandits from the land. The displacement had taken much toll of the community which had got scattered across the globe. Many post-displacement writers of the community adopted Devanagari script for writing Kashmiri. It's for the benefit of all of us that before the displacement, all Kashmiri scholars used to write in Nastali. I haven't heard or seen work which was done pre the Exodus in Devanagari in Kashmir. But I should be corrected if I'm wrong. Okay. Unfortunately, there was no common connection between the writers, and so the standard wasn't there. So different writers use different signs to represent the phonetic representations of Kashmiri. Realizing this to be a serious issue, a committee of some veteran scholars was formed to create a common script that every writer would follow. After a lot of deliberation, the first document was brought out in the year 2000, which went through a few iterations, and finally the updated document was presented by the committee to the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Government of India, in 2009, which is now accepted as the standard Kashmiri Devanagari script. It might be of interest to this August gathering that the first ever Devanagari Kashmiri primer was published in Lahore more than a century ago by none other than Professor Nityanand Shastri. In 1912, with a repeat second edition in 1914. When he sent the first primer to Sir George Grierson, he acknowledged with his words that this will be of immense help to him in the project on hand of the Dictionary of Kashmiri Language, the first edition of which he released in 1916. For some strange reasons, the primer was never seen or used except for the authors of this translation. Interestingly, the diacritical signs used in the primer are the same as the above document which has been now approved by the committee. While this exercise was on, many groups created software for the script, for the digital use by the writer community, which people started using. About 9 years ago, a good friend of mine, who is sitting in this audience, pushed me into editing a community magazine, which was trilingual with Kashmiri as one of the languages. This challenge gave me the opportunity to explore ways of multilingual texting on the computer. I got access to one software that I installed on my laptop and started using for Kashmiri text. Soon I discovered that it's not readable on any other computer device unless supporting the same software was available on that device. This was because the software was not Unicode compatible. A standard for computer texting, thus limiting the text portability. This is why Google Keyboard came handy, which has Kashmiri Devanagari as one of the options and is fully Unicode compatible. I installed it on my Android phone, this one. For the benefit of the authors gathering, the keyboard as followed and used. They approved additional signs for Kashmiri in Devanagari script from the April 2009 official document from the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. Thus, it made the created text seamlessly portable to any computer device or a mobile device. I adopted this standard for my editorial work in Kashmiri. Today, this standard Kashmiri Devanagari keyboard is available on Windows and iOS devices also. This means that our worthy Kashmiri writers, poets and scholars of today can very easily now create their works in digital form and transport globally anywhere. This has also settled the issue of a standard script for Kashmiri language. Coming back to the book, what I got working on transcribing the manuscript, it turned out to be a rich learning experience. The authors have used each word very carefully, conscious of the fact that the translation should not lose the impact, subtle humor, and effectiveness of the original text. This is not easy while attempting a translation. The reader can experience this in the book by reading the original English text on the left page and with its corresponding Kashmiri translation on the right page. Enriching the work, the authors have used specific words to effective use. The translation also reflects strong influence of Sanskrit and Hindi, which seems to be a conscious effort by the authors not to use the more popularly daily used version equivalents. This makes the translation very unique. For example, dispute would normally be translated as fasad in Kashmiri, the authors have instead used Vivad. There are many such examples one encounters in the translation. Pray is Kripa and not Mehergani. Gentleman is Swadar and not Hazrat. Instrument is Astra Shastra and not Avdar. And priest is Purohit. As readers, you will find it gripping to read the flow of language enriched by a rich vocabulary that sets this translation apart from the galaxy of books written in Kashmiri. The command on both the languages is evident from the construction of the sentences in the translation in a single flow with no correction or overhang. This is phenomenal scholarship. I enjoyed my journey through the page. With a limited tools, it was an arduous journey for the book to reach the text form. The work was captured in this tiny device, page by page. Each chapter, once finished, was revisited to check for mistakes. Therefore, thereafter it was copied and sent over email to my laptop. From there, the entire work was converted into a Word document. It will be wrong to say that I didn't encounter the Kashmiri words with translation of which I didn't know the meaning. In collaboration with Dr. Pandita, we went through the entire text, word by word, and sorted out the doubts. I record my deep gratitude for Dr. Pandita to have borne with my pestering long pause to complete this exercise. While we were busy completing the text, Dr. Pandita kept Professor Raghuvi updated regularly on the progress, who was very curious to see the digitized work. When the completed work was sent to him, he completely changed the look of the text by converting the entire work into a spatial Devanagari font called Sharika, which you heard just now. This will be perhaps the first Kashmiri document ever written in this historic font that was created by the German scholar August Wilhelm von Schlegel about 200 years ago. While doing so, Professor Dragovi painstakingly went to the Kashmiri text, most important, and brought out many words that needed correction from our side. This is the level of scholarship from Dragovi. I am profoundly grateful to you, Professor Dragovi, for your voluntary help in chiseling the text and enriching it multifold. For the readers, it will be a treat to the eyes. I am also grateful to him for facilitating the English translation of the chapters in the digital form that saved enormous time that otherwise would have had to be keyed in by me into the video. The ready text was presented to Professor Stokoli with a request to write the foreword for it. I am humbled by his gracious gesture for having accepted to write the foreword for the book. For the readers who will hold this book after its release today, I hope it provides a different reading experience, both as the quality of translation as well as design the text with the spatial form. With its background history of the towering scholar's signature of translation, its long wait for 90 long years, and the arduous journey of discovery of the manuscript till its final print in Avdar, I am sure that this august audience will want to possess this historical book. The book is available at the counter today at a discounted price of $600. I thank you all for having come to grace this occasion and making it special for us. Namaskar.
Thank you, Bhawan Tasuji. You have made us proud to your gathering. Thank you very much. Now, important observation I would like to note is about the pattern that was developed by Professor Nityanand Shastri more than a century earlier, in 1912, if I remember correctly. published in Lahore. And this present font on which Dr. Bhawan has worked, in fact, in redevelopment of that script, Challenger font, typeface, and nothing, no major change has been observed. What has been developed in 1912 by Professor Nityananda Shastri, the present font has been found almost all similar, right? Is my understanding right, sir? No, this is a tribute to the scholarship of Professor Nityananda Shastri. And it needs to be further developed and brought to the community press and to scholars about the script that, about the primer that existed in 1912. And so Dr. Pandita will help us in bringing that out to the public. Dr. Pandita, you have an extra responsibility now to please get it before the eyes of the public. Is there a request? Now I would like to request Shri V. Munshi, our eminent artist. Now, V. Munshi has given Kashmiri flower to this great work of Don Quixote, partial translation, Kashmiri translation by his artwork. As far as art is concerned, I would like to mention Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was also greatly impressed by this work. In fact, he mentions it twice in his own publications. One is in autobiography and the other is glimpses of world history. While mentioning about Don Quixote, he was impressed by the illustrator of Don Quixote, the French artist that had illustrated an edition of Don Quixote. I would like to name that artist. Gustave Doré. He was an eminent French artist who had illustrated Don Quixote, and Dr. Jawaharlal Nehru was greatly impressed by the artwork done in that book. Second time in his work, Glimpses of World History, he again mentions about the Don Quixote, the great book. He mentions it's a great book. He, while writing now, following this French artist, when Picasso came, he also illustrated, many artists have illustrated the great work Don Quixote. That, like they have illustrated many other books. But Don Quixote especially, many artists also have contributed in terms of illustration. And we have our own artists and given the Kashmiri flower of this great work, great artist. While I was, this book was released, I just met through the first page, the artwork of Veer Munshi, adult opening page of the book. I was highly impressed with the image of Sharika and Don Quixote on the front page. Thank you very much, please express your journey.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me here. Mainly Mr. Malakaju, who involved me in this, who keeps involving me in certain things because he's been an old friend. We are from same university, MS University, Baroda, way back. And the second introduction to because his father was an eminent artist, so we look up to him, that generation. But cultural renaissance, which was in Kashmir in those days, and I'm the product of that. So, because you are never alone, you only share and you get inspired by these legacy what people leave behind. So, I remember Arthur Saab. I remember not only his art practice, but the way he carried himself. It was more like a Shakespeare, the way he was carrying. So, I remember taking one image, I had to make a Shakespeare, so those days there's no internet, so I was looking for the images of this person, so I should look at Arthur Saab and make it. I remember I painted him later, the portrait of him, right? So I am an odd man in this presence, hundreds of literary people, with scholars and with professors. So because I'm a visual artist, I deal with my visual practices. So it was just I just got involved to make this illustration. I made it, I recreated it, which was Sancho Panza, which is a fictional character in this by the Spanish author in this book. So that's what was my little contribution to it. But I'm greatly, I think it's a historic day when you created such a good book with Kashmiri diction and Kashmiri language, because I believe the intellectual practices we need to have, because strength of any community, any nation, any person, any country lies in their intellectual property. So this is the one that we have to hold, especially when we are not living where we belong to, we are in exodus, and we got to archive all these material. I think it's a very good archival material for future generations to know where we belong to, what our language is. When we go move in different places, we do carry the culture moorings. Language is our ritualistic practice, and we must leave the imprint wherever we go. I was recently in Maya, because I keep building the house art installations, because I bring the heritage traditions and leave it in my imprint in different places through my way. I think we have to archive intellectual practice. Whatever you do, even if you make this building, you got to have heritage in your head. Because I feel sometimes disturbed when you create these structures, but you don't think of your heritage, because it will be third generation, not second. They'll ask us where we come from, what we belong to. We need to build museums and memoirs, more than temples. Because even if you make the temples, I was just talking in Gurgaon today. When you make a temple, make some strengthening the identity, and this architecture will remain, people will go. Otherwise, we have millions of temples in the country, but we got to have this cultural resource center. And so I'm very proud that Makan and Mr. Farida and Professor were all from Germany and Professor Sotori. The great friends, they have a great job. Thank you very much.
What are your feelings when you write down Quixote and Sancho Panza? What are your feelings as an artist?
It is a very nice fictional character. You see visually, because then you start trying to know about these characters. I think it is a very comic character which speaks a lot. So for me, it is a visual imprint which I want to recreate. Nothing great. It's not my great contribution.
I don't know the great Kashmiri flower. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Bhawan already given a brief by Dr. Faridabad. I have gone through the introduction part of the Sanskrit version of Don Quixote. As Dr. Faridabad already said, it's more than 100 pages. An exhaustive introduction to the work, the journey of Don Quixote that has from the beginning till the present time. So it's a very exhaustive, it's a book in itself. Your introduction, scholarly introduction, is a book in itself. I was highly, enlightened by scholarly introduction that you gave. You also mentioned about one Ratanath Saksha, who was one of the translators of Don Quixote. Incidentally, Ratanath Saksha, he was a Kashmiri Pandit from Kashmir, but born in Lucknow in 1846, 1847, and died in 1903 in Hyderabad. He has translated the book in Urdu, as you already mentioned. He was also Kashmiri from Kashmir, but born in Lucknow. And this is the first book from India that reached the hands of all children together. The first translation, though it was Gujarati translation, but the book that he first received was the Urdu translation by the Sharika. This I would like to mention here. So kindly enlighten us with your help in this. Thank you.
Kindly have the patience. Now comes the icing on the cake.
लाइव शुरू दो पहली बोली छोड़ेगा
आउट होने का बाद पहले बॉल पे ठीक है
चक्का है इसको चाहिए
थोड़ा सा जब से पास कर रहे हैं गुस्सा मिलेगी
लखनऊ है ये
May I request everybody please bear these technical glitches. Can we have water please in between?
But kindly please be seated now. I request everybody please come to their seats. I know it's slightly hot today, but please come to your seats. Surrender Pradipati Kasi Apundi, I request Veer Munsiji please. Surrender Pradipati ji. Let's start. Let's start. Okay. Or to Dr. Kavale.
Okay. Dear guests, the break is over. I will start your conversation, respected candidates, dear friends. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I feel really how in Indian cinema we only the most perseverant cinema lovers remain, and I hope that I will be able to draw your attention for about 45 minutes. I prepared something. I deliberately decided not to talk about Don Quixote because I was anticipating that the speakers before me will do this. And I also had already the opportunity twice to talk about Quixote in Kashmiri and in Sanskrit already in July 2022 and last time on 1st of October 2024. So instead of talking about the Sanskrit and Kashmiri translation of Don Quixote, I decided to say a few words about the Devanagari font which we use for typesetting the Kashmiri translation in the book which we are launching today. I don't know how many of you have already seen the book itself. If not, at least you can see the title in Kashmiri typeset with the font which I'm going to talk about today. About Quixote in the Kashmiri language. As you can see, the title of what I have prepared, I'm going to talk about is on some early Devanagari types and the new incarnation of the Schlegel font. It is a topic which is rather typographic. It is for hours of scripts and especially for hours of the Devanagari script. I wanted to draw your attention to some recent results of a study of mine which is dedicated to the early development of Devanagari removal types. So certainly the older generations know how in early days people were typesetting books and printing books by using movable types done of metal. And this was something which people started also doing intensively in Europe more than 200 years ago. I have prepared, with the help of a font designer from Pune, from SIDA in Pune, Sharika, a digital replica of an old font which was designed in 1821, so more than 200 years ago indeed. And we're now on the verge of releasing this font, which will be freely available to anyone. So what you see in the printed book, you will be able fairly soon to use free on your own computers. Now this smartphone level. Before releasing this font, I decided in fact to document the history of the creation of the original movable text, the original fonts 200 years ago. And I initially didn't know that we can establish so much about it. So I have started working on this more than a year ago, and this is still not quite done, but I'm now almost on the finishing line, and after this we'll prepare also the documentation for the font itself and we'll release this. You see here the working title of the publication, which I hope to publish this year. I don't know where exactly, it might be in India. I very much hope that also with the help of the new Kashmiri translation, with the new printed book, and also with your personal help, we'll be able to publicize this study, and people will be able to learn more about the development of the Devanagari fonts in the early days when Indian studies started in Europe. The Schlegel font, or I call it in Sanskrit Schlegel Libi, is
a set of remarkable Devanagari removal types, which the German literary historian critic, translator, poet, and mythologist Alfred von Schlegel designed, and which the French punch cutter Jean-Joseph Guibert cut in Paris under his supervision in the early 1820s. Almost 200 years later, at my suggestion, Quixote was so kind to make a digital replica. So he's a font expert who is preparing the font itself, and I'm his advisor, supervisor, teaser, solicitor, and tester. There was a predecessor of our digital replica, which is of course a fully compatible Unicode font. There was an earlier attempt to digitize, make a digital replica of the Schlegel font by a Russian colleague, Lev, who in September 2005 prepared one version. It was Unicode, and unfortunately also the Lev passed away at a very early age, and the project remained unfinished, and for our purposes it wasn't usable. So that's why in 2016, so exactly 10 years ago, this year anniversary, I suggested to Quixote to start working with me on a digital Unicode replica, which we were so happy to use for the first time in its modern flavor in the Britain edition version. You see here a sample page from a famous book in which Schlegel used his own types for the first time. This is his edition of the Faridabad, which he himself typeset in his home in Bhawan in Germany. He published this beautiful book in 1823. Anyone who has a good habit, I don't know, because usually I advise students to use the famous dictionary by Böckling. In this dictionary, which was published in Russia, actually two versions of it. One extensive, or the first long version, which was prepared and published between 1855 and 1875. And there is a shorter version, which is actually original, the longer version in many respects. It was published in 1879 until 1889. In both these monumental dictionaries, the Schlegel font was used, and Böckling's dictionary was used almost at the same time by Monier Williams, who published his Sanskrit English dictionary, which of course many of you also know. But you should know actually that this is a great extended translation. And this is not clearly recognized even in the introduction by Monier Williams, but if you wish to use the original, you should actually go back to the Sanskrit, the other book by Böckling, which is the original work. If you have many questions regarding references in Monier Williams, usually you'll find the answer in the original German version. Anyway, in this dictionary, the Schlegel font was used also already in these years, in the mid-19th century. The seed for the creation of these Devanagari rule types was sown already in the first decade of the 19th century by Schlegel's younger brother, Karl Wilhelm Friedrich von Schlegel. In the introduction to his Über die Sprache and Weisheit der Indier, or in English, about the language and the wisdom of the Indians, a book which was published in Heidelberg in 1808, and which, in a way, it forms the quiet beginning of Sanskrit philology on European soil, as one famous philologist has said. We read the following statement by Karl Friedrich Schlegel. By preparing careful copies of exceptionally nice manuscripts written in the Devanagari, as well as some Bengali script, I was aiming to put myself in a position to help with good instructions in some font cutter. The production of Indian text, however, will require close assistance, which until now I have been missing. The sacrifice of one's own advantage for scientific purposes is worth by itself, but if the purpose is of such a kind that it cannot be achieved without external support, it is painful to be forced to stop halfway before reaching the desired goal. Despite Friedrich Schlegel's preparatory work and despite his aspirations, the mission of creating the Devanagari text was left to be completed by his older brother some 15 years later. Even before our Schlegel took the decision to dedicate himself to urban studies around 1830, and in the latter part of his life, he left, besides many other scholarly contributions, a lasting mark in typography. Types for the printed text in Indian languages such as Sanskrit and Hindi had already been in use in Europe with more or less success. Knowledge of the history of the early Devanagari types in Europe helps to assess better the magnitude of Schlegel's phonographic accomplishment. The earliest book of metal types or the printed text in Devanagari script in Europe were created as early as the 17th century. An outline of their history has been provided by Italian scholar Giovanni Amaluzzi in his introduction to the Alphabet Brahmanico, Seoul down on this discussion, which was published in 1771. Soon after the establishment of the Sacra Congregatio de Propaganda in 1622, all government paid all the Indian types to be procured for missionary purposes. This was apparently done, yet the Devanagari types remained neglected for a long time. Until almost a century later, the Italian historian Constantino Ruggieri brought them back to life after 1758. With the assistance of the Italian Consulman Cristiano Delegati from Massara, the state continued in power, Bihar and Bengal in the early 1740s until the mid-1750s. He assaulted Indian types and ensured that some necessary additions were made. Another colleague of his, named Francesco Orazio della Penna, whose varieta you see on this slide, except for the Devanagari fonts of the propaganda type fitted, supervised the production of the first defendable wall types, which the Italian typographer Antonio Mancaluzzi prepared in 1738. Both the Tibetan and the Indian types were used in the alphabet Tibetan by the Augustinian monk Antonio Giorgio. Some Indian words were typeset in the Mathematical Father of George's work as early as 1759, which 3 years later was reprinted as the second part of a much larger book of more than 900 pages, with still more words printed in Indian characters. The very first Indian word to be read in the alphabet of Tibetan is the word bounce, referring to the bounce, from which the Tibetans used to make the columns of the green pen writing. Delegati helped typesetting these words, and he himself made extensive use of the sacred and Devanagari types in his later works. Now, this information is more or less known. I'm showing you here on this slide something which is not so well known. This is a specimen of the Devanagari types of the Vatican, which is apparently now at the same place where the two translations of Vatican were also there for a long time. We see here also the specimen of the Devanagari types, which were available at the Vatican, immediately a sequence of all the available types which they could use at that time for typesetting texts. But you should note that these types were not prepared for example, publishing Kashmiri or Sanskrit texts, but rather for translations of Christian prayers into local Indian languages, some kind of video and a little form. Even more interesting is to learn about the involvement of a great Italian photographer, the type designer Giambattista Budoni, on the occasion of the marriage of Charles Emmanuel IV, Prince of Piedmont, and Marie Marguerite de the younger sister of King Louis XVI of France. In 1775, Budoni prepared one of his early masterpieces, the Lamier Exoticis Linguis Vedita, which one modern biographer of Budoni described as the most extravagant, beautiful, and extensive polyglot book. One of the texts expressing Budoni's best wishes, written in various languages, is portion which you see here on the right side, and it was cut and printed with his own types, which was a minor replica of the earlier propaganda film. In the beginnings of the 19th century, the Bhawan seemed to have prepared a new, almost identical replica of that one, which he used also in his Horatio Dominion, accepting the version of the Paternoster, so Christian prayer, in a language which we call Brahmanic, so in the Brahman language. Both Isabel Bellamy and the Horatio Dominion were reviewed and graphic and home using lighter versions of the old propaganda one, with slightly more ornamented characters and regular gentle sounds to the left. There are many mistakes. I'll skip now the details because we're so late. You can only see here, for example, the word pai and damara, which are called strongly typed words for pa and amara. At that time, Bodoni who didn't know any of these Indian languages, he simply didn't have the types. So he didn't have pa and he didn't have ka. And instead of this, he took something which looked similar. So pai is like papa in terms of graphics, and damara and amara. It's the same story. In any case, it is interesting to observe these specimens predominantly because you can see how in the hands of a very capable, he's one of the most notable European photographers and font designers, a font which wasn't so successful and suddenly became so beautiful. Towards the end of the 18th century, the Indian types of propaganda India were taken away from the Vatican. This happened when after the French invasion of Italy in 1796, Rome fell in the hands of Napoleon Bonaparte, and with his order, the treasures of propaganda printing press were brought to Paris. In 1815, the Imprimerie Imperiale was supposed to return to the printing material, yet a substantial part of the bunches remained in France. About a decade ago, the French scholar behind Jean Petit spotted the so-called Brahmanic bunches in northern France, and meanwhile the drawer with all 212 punches of stamps, which is the initial utensil which is used for preparing knives. We have those who people that don't have so much experience. We need to write the stamp, then we make the mattress. The mattress is used to cast the type, and then we take the individual type and we set the whole page with this individual type. So this is the whole story. You see here the very first stage. In the upper part of the slide of the right hand side, we see the stamps, which are in the opposite of the mirrors, so to say, because there's several transformations until we get on the printed page the actual in the photo. Yes, yeah, exactly. Now there is a second development one produced in Europe, and this was the work of Joseph Jackson, a former apprentice of William Castle I. And since the early 1770s, he repeated punch that found in London. He had little experience with Oriental types, however, and initially failed in cutting the first Bengali Purple types, which he was commissioned to prepare for William Ball's former silver of the keys in the African Bengal. A few years later, Nathan Mallet, the author of Grammar of the Bengal language, gave a very scathing assessment of this first attempt to produce the Bengali types. He said, Mr. Bose was supposed to be well versed in this language, Bengali, attempted to fabricate a set of types for it with the assistance of the ablest artists in London, but as he rigorously failed in executing even the easiest part or primary method of which he had published a specimen, there is no reason to suppose that this project, when completed, would have advanced beyond the usual state of imperfection to which new inventions are constantly exposed. You can see here the Bengali main ushers, which goes with continuity. In the early 1780s, William Kirkpatrick, the author of the account of the Kingdom of Nepal, 1811, conceived a plan for a multi-volume Indian grammar dictionary named Bhawan. And since he was eager to present the Hindi words in the proper character, he commissioned Jackson to manufacture this time an Angli type, so not the Bengali, until the beginning of 1785, however, the work on this font was allegedly unfinished, so Kirkpatrick decided published first the second part, namely his vocabulary Persian, Arabic, and English, in which no word happened to typeset in Devanagari. With the exception of one more short part of Patrick's work, which was printed in Calcutta in 1799, the remaining parts of the edition said never got published. Thus, Jackson's songs remained largely unused in the work for which it was originally commissioned. The Jackson certainly managed to produce with Devanagari font is evident both from two specimen sheets as well as from some publications printed in Calcutta in the late 1780s and 1790s. You see here on the right side, Jackson's specimen of Devanagari preparing technically Hindi grammar and dictionary, attached to a copy of Patrick's book in the library of the St. White Foundation Institute in London. And here you can see also another specimen signed by Jackson, the library specimen of the Devanagari of specimen of the Devanagari of Hindi type. And this proves actually more interesting because we can see here more types exemplified. And we see in which state of preparation they basically remain in the mid 1780s. 1780s. You can observe here also some problematic aksharas like O, K, G, Sh, and L, which I guess most of you would be not recognizable because they have in such a specific way that they phenomenal use of this group that they're not intelligible. And apart from this problem, there weren't any specific aksharas which we usually need for Sanskrit, like the retroflex na or ri, and even the particle nya and sh, retroflex and the particle. So several aksharas which were very important for typesetting economic Sanskrit basic were completely missing. And in addition, it is possible to see that the image is too small, that he cut all the main aksharas with the vowel sign, for example, ikara, together as an individual unit, which is not very practical, because then if you want to cut everything, you cut a very big set of types, which you didn't have. Due to these significant limitations, this font was put in actual use quite rarely. And the only printer who is known to have utilized it was one Joseph Cooper in Calcutta. In July 1789, Cooper printed the earliest known publication in which Jackson's types can be recognized. The first volume of the New Asiatic Miscellany included two texts typeset in Devanagari characters, namely Pancharatani, or 5 gems, consisting of 5 economic numbers in Sanskrit, and Rekla, or 4 from Bali, consisting of 8 movements by Bali of the group, they call it. The first scholar who referred to these early Devanagari prints was Graham Shaw, a British librarian and an expert in early Indian prints. He assumed that, I quote, this is the first known instance of Devanagari font having been successfully cast in India. In addition, Shaw claimed that its design appears to have been derived from, though not identical with that of Joseph Jackson's Nagari font cut in London, or the projected Hindi vocabulary of William Patrick in the mid-1780s. Now, I consider these statements misleading. For close inspection, let us establish that Cooper used Jackson's font and only made some more or less successful accessory additions and adjustments. Since Jackson's Devanagari type was originally cut for typesetting the Hindi grammar, it was considerably easy to typeset Bali's poem in Urdu, because there he needed only a few additional aksharas, the rest was available. All the remaining aksharas apart from sh were in fact already available to Cooper and he could typeset the same without any issue. Thus, we can conclude that regardless of whether Cooper had at his disposal Jackson's types themselves or he cast in his own foundry in Calcutta a new set by using British mattresses, the first Devanagari movable types manufactured in London by Joseph Jackson in the mid-1780s actually used for the first time in Calcutta, and this happened no later than July 1789. I said in the news article said that Sanskrit Pancharatna posed, on the other hand, the major challenge for Cuba had to find a suitable solution for all the correspondence letters missing in the London Devanagari font, and also had to supply locally whatever other types were either not available or deemed less appropriate than printed Sanskrit text. As far as possible, Cooper used the material left by Jackson and in some cases proceeded in a rather unconventional way. For example, he took advantage of Jackson's shape of so the initial which could be easily misread as sh, and combined it with a roughly cut E color as a replacement for the missing G at the beginning. For the unavailable Sh-cha and Sh-che, he simply joined after removing this vertical stroke, Va and Ve, and in this way he gave the impression that the actuals which he was missing. Even more funny is the Akshara Shnu in the word Vishnu, because the none was also not available. Cooper put together a newly cut form of Sh, with Jackson's original U relying on the graphic similarity of Shku and Shnu. For a number of other letters, the printer opted to replace Jackson's types with alternative ones, which even though produced by a less skillful hand in Calcutta were easy to interpret, as in the case of all combinations with Ch, H, R, and L. You see here the L highlighted in red and the Ch highlighted in blue. So these are types which were not cut by Jackson, and these are local replacements. You can also observe what happened with the K. Instead of using Jackson's unsuccessful K, we see a combination of R and V. It's a common mistake actually in today's Nagari when you write R and V next to each other. You can misread this also as K or the other way around. Since this procedure extensive missing of Jackson's Devanagari with local remain types from another form was hardly feasible to typeset in Sanskrit in the 1790s, Cooper used the original types a few more times only to Indian book. For example, in John Gilchrist's grammar of the Hindustani language written in 1796, accompanied by the famous Indo-Persian poet Naman Khusro, was typeset in which side by side with Jackson's R, which you can see here highlighted in red. In green. Cooper also used Price his Calcutta alternative letter shape, which is here highlighted in red. So we have here in 4 lines we have a combination of 2 different types of R. One was the original from London, and the other one was locally cut in Calcutta. What's also important to mention in this regard is that in several important works on Indian typography, for example, in periodicals, the printing press in India, which was published in 1958, and the nice typography of Devanagari from 1971, this specimen has been erroneously kept for the earliest Devanagari printing with Urdu types in India. It is now clear that the first such Calcutta print was produced already in 1789, and this was done mostly with a font cut not in India but in Britain. In 1796, a less sophisticated replica of Jackson's font seems to have been made use for the purposes of printing an auction notice in Devanagari letters in several issues of the Calcutta Gazette in June and July 1796. So they were more easy to use this for local purposes. In the same year, the articles of 4 in English version of Hindustani, the Latin Nagari, and Roman characters published in Calcutta in 1796 was printed. Even though the Devanagari types used for this print were reportedly cast by Peter Spalding, a Scottish colonial trader who in 1781 went to India, for some time was in charge of the East India Company's print in Calcutta, it is hardly justified to refer to them as a Spalding font, for they were obviously produced in Calcutta by closely imitating Jackson's font, and possibly by using some materials exported from London. When in 1798, Euclid's praised his holding for, I quote, a beautiful set of Nagari and even Sanskrit types, the first yet finished by any artist in this country or Europe, he proves indeed not only to have remained unaware of the contribution of the Italian type founders, but also did not give proper credit to Joseph Jackson and Joseph Cooper. The last known extensive use of Jackson's original font is witnessed in the first part of Philip Patrick's New Hindi Grammar Dictionary, which Joseph Cooper printed and published in 1799 in Calcutta, more than a decade after his namesake and likely a relative had printed the seventh font from the same work in London. After Cooper's print of 1799, Jackson's officially removed the types they amount of use. Printers in Calcutta opted for better alternatives, which in the meantime had started in rapid succession. A major figure in Indian typography who played a very important role in the subsequent development of the Devanagari fonts, both in India and in Europe, is the British ethnologist Sir Charles Wilkins. This is how on the 1st of October 1783, George Ferry described Wilkins in a letter to the well-known printer John Nichols. Mr. Wilkins is the gentleman whose scanty typography has made rapid progress some years ago. He made every tool necessary to form the punches and matrices and casting the complete folded Bengal characters so carefully united as not to leave their junction visible but a very minute examination. He has since that formed a very current and beautiful form of Persian italic characters in which the contrivances and illusions in exactly imitating the writing in the same space are surely admirable, and it ends when his present avocations will permit to cast a complete set of Sanskrit characters in order to print the grammar of that recognized language which he has composed. After helping Khaled to print his grammar of the Bengal language in 1778 by cutting the first Bengali multiple Bengal types, Wilkins took up the study of Sanskrit and became also involved in Devanagari. His appointment in 1778 as the first superintendent of the Honorable Communist Press in Bengal gave him ample opportunities to enrich his experience as a type founder and printed first in Malta until 1781 and later in Calcutta. You can see here one of Wilkins' own prints and also his capital letters C and W, which we probably recognize, and below it is also written Charles Wilkins in Astley. It took Wilkins more than a decade before he could attempt producing the Devanagari font in the mid-1790s, when he was already back in England. Initially, he cast his Sanskrit types in 1796, but lost to beautify. Fortunately, most of his punches and matches survived, and so in 1808, he was able to cast his types one more time in order to print his grammar of the Sanskrit language. You see on its title page, Sanskrit stanza, which Wilkins wrote and composed himself. It says, Ayukta Yadita Bhota Pramadena Pramena Va Achamya Deyakanda Sandat Satrolian. In the preface to his grammar, the British scholar recounted the dramatic events which jeopardized the production of his types. He says, I cut letters in steel, made matrices and molds, and cast from them a font of types of the Devanagari character, all with my own hands. And with the assistance of such mechanics as a country village, with the font I very speedily prepared all the other implements of printing in my own dwelling house. For by the 2nd of May of the same year, I had taken proofs of 16 pages, differing but little from those now exhibited in the first two sheets. Till 2 o'clock on that day, everything had succeeded to my expectations, when, alas, the premises were discovered to be flames, which, spreading too rapidly to be extinguished, the whole building was presently burned to the ground. In the midst of this misfortune, I happily saved all my books and manuscripts, and the greatest part of the punches and matrices, but the types themselves having been thrown out and scattered over the lawn, were either lost or rendered useless. You can see here 2 pages from Alexander Hamilton's edition of the Quixote, which was printed with Wilkins's Devanagari font. And this is the first Sanskrit book published in Europe in 1810. Wilkins, the captain of Bengal, he was once called in this country, made his font accessible in England and thus enabled typesetters on the island to print most satisfactory books in Sanskrit. Though, with regard to its general appearance, Wilkins' font looks somewhat similar to Jackson's Devanagari, both being graphically unpretentious and with a less prominent appreciation of thin lines. It had the crucial advantage of being designed primarily for Sanskrit. It contained a much richer set of letters, which were more organized in such a way that the composition of complex functions became both possible and comparatively easy. Vowel signs were cast in separate pieces of metal so that, unlike Jackson's font, the composition of consonant letters was achieved with superscribed or subscribed vowel signs, mostly without the need of casting individual types of such divisions. In 1819, almost a decade after Hamilton had published his edition of the Quixote in 1810, the German scholar Franz Bopp, the founder of the Indo-European linguistics, became the first non-British to edit and translate in Europe another Sanskrit text, namely the Sharika and Bhawan. Bopp presented the Sanskrit excerpt on facing pages with his literal Latin translation and used for typesetting the original text Wilkins's Devanagari, which stood at his disposal during his research later on from October 1818 to July 1820. This was a great achievement, especially when one bears in mind that young Bopp, he was then not yet 30 years old, had started learning Sanskrit autodidactically less than 6 years earlier in Paris. Bopp's Sanskrit edition was only the second one in Europe to be printed in the Old Indian language. Following his examples in the late 1820s and the early 1830s, printing August Rosen and Adolf Friedrich Schnetzler, two of Bopp's most illustrious German students, also went to London to study the manuscript and publish it there, but first put their own research. Thus, Rosen's Liebe des Sanctiter, which is one of the most remarkable and ambitious publications from the early days of philological studies, was typeset with Wilkins's letters. The book appeared posthumously in 1838, for Rosen died prematurely at the age of 32 in September 1837. He never had a chance to see the book in its entirety, nor was he able to complete his life work, which he pursued in an untrodden field hindered by many obstacles. Max Müller came much later. But since there is now no time, I'll skip the rest of all this, and I'll move to the next topic. I would like to show you here another book which perhaps people in Maharashtra should know better, but I already tested them and they do not know about it. Balaboda Mutavali, which is a Marathi translation of Aesop's fables prepared with the case of Sharavojia II, the last Raja of Tanjore. Almost a century ago, Graham Shaw wrote a very informative article about the Tanjore of Aesop, which he found out to be, I quote, probably the earliest complete translation into any Indian language and the first to be printed in an Indian script. Shaw's valuable contribution escaped the attention of another colleague of mine, Alessandro Draghelli, who in a recent paper falsely claimed that the Marathi book was printed with Wilkins's font in November 1806. This is, of course, impossible for that time. The types were not yet cast as we again misunderstood the Marathi colophon, which contains the date of the translation, and overlooked the Sanskrit colophon, in which the date of the print given in Latin corresponds to the 8th of January 1810. Now, besides this very interesting translation in Marathi, Wilkins's Devanagari font was used in Tanjore only for a very limited number of other books in Sanskrit, and after 1814, no other Indian prints are known to have been produced. It's quite remarkable how quickly Sarkozy acquired the set from London to be able to print this translation, which he already had available since 1806, and he managed to print it in 1810. So that's the history of this remarkable book, which I would suppose that is probably not digitized, not scanned, it's not available freely in India. I would expect as a historian or someone who is biographically interested in history of Indian tourism that this is one of the prints that should be well three early Devanagari fonts produced in Europe, namely the metaphorical types of the Propaganda Trinitatis in Italy, then Joseph Jackson's, and the third one was Charles Wilkins's fourth garden in England. The information about these three fonts was more or less available, with some, as you already know, some misleading ideas and assertions. I will show you now something else which is even less known. Again, my French colleague Jean Petit was the first who drew our attention to this French production of folk European Devanagari. It was cut around 1815 in Paris at the initiative of Louis Lalbec, who was a very active librarian in Paris. And the font was cut by a very capable French engraver called Fouquet, who worked under the supervision of an Indologist Antoine Lebrun. Now, we don't have any prints with this font, and the reason is that they never cast times. So we have only the bunches of this font and the impression of directly taken from the bunches. So no times were produced. They at that time knew about this attempt to cut a new font, and he even knew the price of the bunches. So if he knew that it should be 4 francs per engraved color punch, or 6 francs per punch for steel punch. And if you calculate, because we have more than 600, it would have cost a fortune to get this. Now we have altogether 693 sorts for individual characters. And this is much more than in the previous version. In comparison of the proofs, which you see now on the left-hand side, of Fouquet's in 700 punches with the set of 770 letter fonts, which in the Laxman, Panchana, and Manopa have the 803, and William Carey illustrated this around with Sanskrit language in the set of 806. The reveals that Fouquet actually manufactured nothing but the French replica of the Indian font. So we could sample from Carey's grammar, from the work of Panchana and Manopa, and make the French replicas. You can see this quite easily if you place particular types, particular aksharas side by side. Fouquet followed very closely the design of Panchana and Manopa and replicated most of the characters, including those cases where Panchana and Manopa gave alternatives. So, for example, the double word, which could be written one after the other, or it could also be written vertically, one under the other. And we can see this also in the French replica. And in the same way, Fouquet replicated all the other alternative shapes which we find in Panchana and Manopa's work. I will skip now this part, which is actually very interesting, but this is the 5th European Devanagari font, which was cut in Poland, in Warsaw. And in this case, again, the black founders in Warsaw, who are actually of German origin, they copied again the work by Panchana and Manopa, without worrying about his attempt. And this was done in 1860. The Polish scholar who initiated the project was called Valentis Romanowski, because he was obsessed with the idea to show that the Polish language and the Sanskrit language are very tightly connected. And he wanted to prove this and to type various words in Devanagari. And in his study publication in 1816, he typed actually only one sentence or one expression. Before in Rada Balashandi Parasava, 1860, which means the Polish city of Warsaw, 1860. You can see here a good comparison between the original types of Panchana and Manopa have the fifth Banana font in Europe is an independent replica of the Indian font cut by Bhawan and Manava at the Sandro printing press. Perhaps only very quickly, I'm showing you here another example of a late production from 1828, again from Poland, where we see a combination of the initial Polish replica font and another replica font, which was based already on Schlegel's font. And in this Polish publication, both replica fonts were mixed. So we have in a way a double replica in this publication of the late 1820s in Poland. I'm skipping the details because I know that we are very late, so I'm really not jumping. Sorry for this. But I have to reach the more important part. I would like to show you here the portraits of the Prussian State Chancellor Prince Karl August von Kaltenberg and the Prussian Minister of Education, Baron Altenstein. These two gentlemen played a crucial role financially and institutionally supporting Schlegel's ethnographical techniques. After declining the generous offer of a professorship position at the University of Berlin since the winter term of 1818-1819, Schlegel began teaching as a professor at the newly established Rhine University in Bonn. After a long turbulent career in various European places, Schlegel quickly started liking Bonn, which according to him is, he liked it because of its nice surroundings, its mild climate, the location, convenient for short and long journeys. He had already made journeys to London and Paris. The friendly relationship with one's colleagues, the present informality, and even the littleness of a small town. Well, on December 7, 1819, Schlegel wrote a letter of resignation in direct reaction to the Karlsbad decrees adopted in September 1819, which had brought censorship, restrictions, and persecutions to German universities. So he as a gesture of solidarity, he quickly wanted to resign because he wasn't, he didn't agree with the restrictions which were introduced in the German universities at that time. You can imagine the situation nowadays where so many professors will do the same. The Prussian authorities did not wish to see Schlegel leaving, however, and asked him to propose any academic project he would carry out in return for staying at the university. He consented under the condition that he would be allowed, I quote, to make the study of Sanskrit and Indian literature in general thoroughly native in Germany. And on March 6, 1820, in his official plan, Schlegel mentioned that, I quote, the decisive step would be the procurement of Indian types. So this was his condition to remain at the university. Less than 20 days later, on March 25, 1820, Schlegel received from Heidelberg a letter informing him that his proposal and plans had the full support of the Prussian authorities. He was guaranteed a 6 months leave at houses and the sum of $2,000 for the reduction of his Indian types in Paris. At the end of this letter, which you see on this slide, the Chancellor wrote some notable lines, which I will quote now in English. The spirit of thorough research and multifaceted means circumspection, as well as the profound sense of art, will have a common idea in all your worlds and have always led you to far-reaching views are for me a sure guarantee that this new literary journey of yours into a region of the world so rare and visible by profound thinkers, insight of historians and art historians and knowledgeable connoisseurs of the Orient will bring out from the cradle of civilization the most magnificent enrichment and the most surprising field to European literature, as well as the most significant insights into human history and education in general. I have difficulties to imagine that the German Chancellor Max or Mr. Modi can write nowadays lines like this. And the proof that these are not empty words, we see in the case of Schlegel. Within just less than 8 months, and only some 6 years after he had started learning Sanskrit, Schlegel delivered what is arguably one of the finest, if not the most exquisite that he himself prepared the drawings for every character explained in his own reports and is corroborated by specimens of his handwriting as the one described. You can observe how beautifully he wrote the Devanagari characters Sri and Shaya Nama in his own name Shri. This is in a letter to a French friend of his from May 1821. So you can see that calligraphy was also one of his talents. And I didn't mention, but before turning to Indian studies at the age of 50, Sharika had already translated 17 plays by Shakespeare, 1/5 of the Divine Commedia, plays by Calderon and whatnot. And then he decided to go into less known area like Indian studies, and he produced at the end most of this one. Sharika designed here not only all early Devanagari fonts which I already mentioned, but also he paid special attention to some very nicely written Indian manuscripts in the collection of the Royal Library of the French capital. He used in particular bulky paper copies of the Ramayana written in the late 1750s, one volume of which you can see here on the right hand side. Sharika was certainly influenced by the script of these copies and emulated some of its letter forms. Most remarkable is his decision to introduce a very rare variant shape of the geminated L, so the double L. Instead of opting to write the double L horizontally as we normally do nowadays in Nagari, so half L over L, or as they did in earlier times in manuscripts, L one under the other, he opted, or he designed a letter form in which the standard character merged on the left-hand side with the main part of the second letter located counterclockwise at 90 degrees, resulting in a highly unusual, though very artful and still recognizable double. This unique letter form might be considered the hallmark of Sharika's Devanagari fonts. Now, I have also highlighted one of the original doubles, which are written in the same way in this Ramayana in the 1750s. However, you will not find this double in the Kashmiri translation because there we opted to use a modern style of the Sharika replica, in which you have the optionality to stack the double in 3 different ways. Either use the original font as the yellow one here, or to stack it horizontally, or to stack it vertically. And then in addition, you have also the so-called Marathi, which is not with the right vertical stroke, with the vertical stroke on the right side, but rather with inside. So you will not find this double peculiar L in the Kashmiri translation, but I consider this in a way the hallmark of Sharika's font, because there is not a single modern Devanagari font in which you find this shape. Not very easy nowadays like this. Sharika did not content himself with simply imitating Indian calligraphers, for his aim was to rather combine the original Indian characters with European tastes. The French manuscript Jean-Joseph Vibert was a perfect man for this job. Thanks to his apprenticeship with the Didots, and especially after his collaboration with Pierre Didot, Vibert was able to cut Devanagari punches bearing such elegance and precision, which until then one could admire only in the Parisian modern-faced Roman types. By the beginning of April 1821, an impressive specimen booklet was printed, from which I have reproduced here 2 pages on the right side. Yet Sharika was still not done with this and continued working on the font. His principle was to improve or completely redo anything that seemed to him unsuccessful or not quite right for as long as it became satisfactory. Within a few more months, the font was reworked substantially and brought much closer to perfection. The final version of his Devanagari font Sharika used for the first time for printing his own edition of the Bhawan, which I mentioned in the beginning. He typeset this book himself because at that time in Germany there wasn't any other one who could use these full types which he had produced. So he did it himself in his own home. So you can imagine he had all the types, he had all the different devices which were necessary, and he typed this edition of the Bhawan himself. And one of the first copies was presented to Goethe. So he sent one of the copies to Goethe to have the pleasure to admire this work. And we have all the letters which I researched in German archives, and it's fascinating the story. right side, the same text typeset with a new digital photographic share song. And you hardly notice the difference. With this, I suggest to come up to an end. I'm showing on this slide the two varieties, somewhat before the old-fashioned original shape of the shape on the left side, and the modern flavor in which you can see, for example, the initial bird, which is more common with the Devanagari, or the end of the Sarina, you see the modern nun, which is, of course, more easily recognizable than the default of the left side. And besides this, you can also see something which is quite rare. In fact, in modern Devanagari photography, impossible to achieve in this way, namely the letter shape. It's very interesting that in early Devanagari prints, Sanskrit prints in Europe, they started introducing letter shape, letter spacing, which they had, of course, in Western world. And for this, we need to be able to split, for example, in that case, the mum and the mother, because you have to insert space in between. When you nowadays type with modern fonts, once you write one and then the mother, then it is joined, and then you cannot split it, then you cannot have proper letter space. Now, with the modern digital replica shape, you go down, you can write anything and you can make as much letter space as you wish. But with this, I'm reading out.
Thank you, Dr. Caroline. We have gone through a journey of around 203 years from Bhawan to Faridabad. Grateful to you. Thank you very much. Advertising is the way of learning. I have always maintained that research has no full stop. Before I request Professor Sri Sopari to come presidential address, I would like to announce with great honor and respect that the first copy of the translated Kashmiri translation of Dr. Quixote has been presented to Dr. Karan Singh today in New Delhi. We are greatly honored that this honor has kindly accepted and received this great book from Kashmiri community.
Thank you. Dr. Ashok.
I have photographed with me. Dr. Karan Singh has always maintained that his learning has come from his teachers who are great Kashmiri professors. He has always acknowledged most of the functions are attended. He does not make any words acknowledging the contribution of Kashmiri society to the history of scholars in the land. I would like to, from this honor staff, place on record our gratitude to Dr. Karan Singh on this occasion. Directors of Dr. Sri Sopari, please come and please sit down. Professor, sorry, because Padma Shri Babaji, late Shri J. Bhawan, on this occasion I will also put a word of gratitude to the memory of Babaji, in whose name is all stands here and we are standing here. May I now request Shri Bhawan, please come and give a formal vote of thanks, and after that we will break for this program conclusion, and we will have some tea snacks, whatever we want, and discuss. I, on my personal behalf, extend my profound gratitude to all of you for listening to us with great patience and sticking to the proceedings for a long time in spite of the weather conditions and in spite of some technical glitches in between, for which I personally apologize to everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you. Very much.
We are coming to the conclusion of this program. I would like to thank Professor Yakubi to have come all the way from Germany for this particular occasion. Professor Sopori, unfortunately, he had to leave early because he wasn't pretty well. Dr. Pandita, my friends, Mr. C.L. Paul and Srimad for doing the honors and addressing all of you here. I am also thankful to all of you, and on behalf of Nityanand Shastri Kashmir Research Institute, I thank you for having made this program very, very special by your presence. And it's already too late. I know the cricket match is going on, and so I don't take too much of your time. Thank you very much once again. I request Bhawan to come here, and I request Apeksha to we would like to have a group photograph. Kindly come, all of you quickly here, so that we can finish this formality.